Hello and welcome to today's show. Now, from the title, I'm pretty sure you already know what I'm going to talk about. But you might be asking yourself, but why is Ben Shapiro on the screen? I mean, you're talking about Kyrie Irving. What do the two have to do with each other? I'll get to that in a minute. But let's just say that things will be made clear as we move along, right? They sure will. Um, this whole Kyrie situation has been blown out of proportion. Anybody who's been watching social media, we know that for sure. If you're a person that's been in the truth for a long time, you also know that. If you're a person that was keeping abreast of the situation with Ye, it is also apparent. Now they have gone on and asked him to do these 6 things in order for him to be reinstated in the league, which I think is just ridiculous. In my honest and humble opinion, I think it's completely crazy for simply posting a link to a documentary which you did not finance, you did not market. What he simply did was he watched it. I guess he liked it. So he posted a link. That is not advertising, right? I have this hat on, I have this t-shirt, and I have this plaid shirt. Am I advertising right now? Is that what I'm doing? Because I don't have any stock in any of these companies. Is that advertising? I have on this digital watch. Is this advertising? It's not. It's simply what I'm wearing right now. Okay. I do it on my social media all the time. I will post links to songs that I like, songs that my kids like sometimes, music videos, um, probably another YouTube post that said something that I thought was relevant, right? Because this is what you do when you have a platform. You have 100, 200, 300, 400 people, right? You see something, you like it, you don't know if other people know about it, so you post a link. They check it out if they want to, right? That's how it goes. That's how it goes with me. I post a link. Sometimes people will comment, sometimes nobody will comment. Other people will check it out and then get back to me, like, in DMs or through Messenger, stuff like that. That's what really goes on. I have no financial gain from when they check it out or if they purchase it or something like that. That's what you do just as a person, right? We post stuff on our social media all the time. So I think this reaction by the NBA and Adam Silver was way out of proportion. But then it goes back to what Ye was talking about, right? It goes back to Ye because he came out and he said these things. He was crucified by all these companies and the media saying he's anti Semitic, he's all these things. But when it comes to Kyrie now, he didn't say all these things that Ye said. All he did was simply post a link. And then people are calling him anti Semitic. How is that possible? He never said anything like that before. As he said, he's never liked anything like that before. Now they want him to apologize. You have to give $500,000. He has to go to sensitivity training and all this other stuff. And I'm like, wow. What about Kyrie's apology? I don't hear anybody calling for it. Not in the media, nobody in the NBA, nothing. And let's be clear, there's a lot of big figures in media, sports, that are so-called black. They might look black, but these guys are Oreos. Let's just face it, right? We have the LeBron James, right? The Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharp, Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal. These guys don't have nothing to offer the black community. Them and their wealth, they can keep it. They can go that way. We'll take Kyrie Irving this way to the right, and we'll take Ye this way to the right. All right, let me play a clip from this for you, and you will see why I have this up there. And I says to myself, so where's Kyrie's apology? Where's his, money? Right? Because don't forget, he had to sit out during the vax mandates, um, because he chose to be unvaccinated. How much money did he lose?
Well, from the very outset of the COVID vaccine movement, there are a couple of rationales that were given for why people should take the COVID vaccines. One was apparently there was robust data on the lowering of the risk of death, particularly if you were old and vulnerable from baseline COVID. If you were young and you were healthy, then the idea that you were going to die from COVID was always a misnomer. The chances of you dying from COVID at the age of 30, if you work out 4 times a week and you eat healthy and you don't have diabetes or something, well, those chances were always extremely low. But if you were 65 plus and you were obese and you had diabetes, the chances of you dying from COVID were actually fairly high compared to things like the flu. And then COVID lowered the rates of death on that. So that was one reason to take the COVID vaccine, was to protect yourself. And that case was fairly strong for a large percentage of the population because we have a lot of elderly people in the United States and we have a lot of fat people in the United States and we have a lot of people with pre-existing conditions in the United States. Then there was a secondary case that was made. And that case was made largely on the basis of Pfizer claims and Moderna claims that it would lower the transmission rates to take the COVID vaccine. And the way to bring an end to the pandemic was get the vaccine so that your friends wouldn't get COVID. Get the vaccine so your parents wouldn't get COVID. And this was promoted very early on by Pfizer and Moderna, like back in November, December of 2020, before Joe Biden even took office. And given that that was the data that was being released, that was the data that most of us in the media used.
Now, before I allow him to continue, let me just say that I myself am not a physician, right? I have no empirical data to provide anybody for them to make a decision on their own about what they want to do with their own health care. But on a personal note, I chose not to take it. Why? I just felt that it was too soon, right? Because I'm at the age already where I know that these things require years of research. I don't care how, technologically advanced people say we are and all these things. There's all these cancers that people apparently cannot cure, right? All these diseases, the atherosclerosis, heart disease, stroke, all these things that people die from on a yearly basis. We are this tech savvy, we are this advanced, but all these people still die from these things. So to me, it was a no-brainer. Like, I'm not gonna get it. But let me let him continue.
Including in conservative media, because that was the available data. I suggested that people should get the vaccine back in about December of 2020 for specifically this reason. That was the available information at the time. Now, there are people who are saying, ignore that information. It's not true. But, and maybe they turned out to be right, as it turns out. But jumping to conclusions based on the absence of data is not the same thing as trying to follow the data until it turns. In any case, it is now perfectly clear that we were lied to. And we were lied to, and we were lied to at a very high level from very, very early on by both the vaccine companies in terms of the ability of the vaccine to prevent transmission. And we were also lied to by our politicians who apparently knew better. And they just kept lying. And this is creating, you want to know why there's mistrust in the institutions? It would be because.
From my experience and my years on this earth, I have come to an understanding that the majority of politicians don't tell the truth. They will do whatever it takes to stay in power over the people, to keep their position and their status as lawmaker, overseer, and by a large majority, all they're going to do is toe the party line. Very seldom will you find an anomaly that is willing to stand up and say, listen, I got here because I was appointed by the people. I have to do what is in their best interest. And if you find that others within the party are not doing it, you come out and you speak out against them openly. You get on as many news cameras, podcasts, or platforms as you can and say, listen, you guys appointed me. these people that I'm supposed to work with, they're not doing what is in your best interest. Now, you may go out as a martyr because of it, but at least you know what you stand on. And I think that is something that is sorely lacking in American government and politics. But let's continue.
Because of this kind of stuff. It's because you have experts who are constantly telling the platonic lie to people. And people who want to have faith in the experts, because you have to use heuristics when it comes to the world, right? You can't study down on every single issue. When you go to the doctor, the reason you go to the doctor is because you didn't have time to go to medical school. Right? The reason you go to the plumber is because you didn't have time to learn to become a plumber. The reason that you go to the mechanic is because you don't know how to take cars apart. You have to rely on the expertise of another human being who has spent an inordinate amount of time studying an issue. And then you have to sort of take that data and use it as best you can. Now, it can be that you distrust the data. It can be you don't trust the people who are giving you the data. But the big problem here is that when you have an entire institution like the scientific institutions or the government, and the government is issuing lies in order to get you to do a thing, and then it turns out that these things are lies, well, people's distrust in the institution is going to skyrocket, right? Again, if you outsource your plumbing to a plumber, and the plumber just keeps clogging the lines, at a certain point, you don't use that plumber anymore. If you keep taking your car to the mechanic and the mechanic drops the engine out the bottom of the car, you're not going to go to that mechanic ever again. Well, the same thing is true when it comes.
Let me just say that the points that he's making are true, they're accurate, but let's be honest. If you've done even cursory research on the American government and the things that different factions and sections have been responsible for, that a larger portion knew about and tried to cover up, wouldn't you always be leery of things like that? Right? Wouldn't you say to yourself after the Tuskegee experiment and MK Ultra and all these different operations and things that people didn't know about but were conducted, and the higher ups knew about, the heavily redacted documents, wouldn't you say to yourself that, I don't think so. I don't trust them. Trust them as far as I could throw a stone at them. So to say that, oh, well, yeah, you can't study down on everything, so you have to go with it, it's not necessarily true. As a private individual, you go to your physician, they tell you whatever's going on with you, and you rely on that to make adjustments, whether it be to your eating habits, your health, exercise, things of that nature. That's true. But when it comes from an overarching facility like the government, which, by the way, we're in support of less government, not more government, you have to see it for what it is. You're like, no, this is a form of control that I don't support. Let's move on.
Comes to the lies that we were apparently told about the ability of the vaccines to block transmission. So, for example, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a Pfizer executive who was being grilled by members of the ECR, the EU, the European Commission. And this Pfizer executive basically said that they never even tested the COVID jab to determine whether it controlled transmission or not. This is an astonishing acknowledgement. She was asked a question, and her name is Janine Small. She was Pfizer's president of international developed markets. She made this admission before the European Union Parliament. She was asked by European Union member of Parliament Rob Roos if the company tested the mRNA vaccine on stopping transmission before they rolled it out. And here is what she said.
Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunisation before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market.
But you didn't move.
No. This is what everybody was being told. I literally got fired from my job because I refused to take it. I applied for religious and medical exemption, which, by the way, I already had religious exemption prior to the pandemic. Do you know they were both denied and I was fired? Why? If we're now finding out that it isn't what they really said it was to begin with, aren't we all owed an apology and reimbursement and compensation for people that were terminated from their jobs? But let's move on.
At the speed of science. In fact, it turns out that you are basically lying to the American public and to the global public about the ability of these vaccines to stop transmission, which is an amazing, amazing thing because, again, huge swaths of people who are pushing vax mandates. So I never pushed vaccine mandates. My company actually sued to prevent the Biden vax mandate from going forward in the United States with regard to OSHA. But this was pushed on the basis that you would not infect mom and dad if you got the vax yourself. You did it for the community. You didn't just get the vax for yourself. You got the vax for the community. Well, if you got the vax for yourself, good for you. I mean, that was your choice. But again, the idea that was promoted, and it makes me really, really angry to be lied to by these people, especially because these people then continue to claim their expertise. They continue to claim that we should believe them on everything. And then they whine that people don't believe the science. You never presented science. Instead, you presented a platonic lie about what exactly was going to happen if people took the vax. It was going to die down. There would be no more transmission. And what's more, it turns out the Biden White House knew this and they promoted the lie anyway. This is truly amazing stuff here. According to the Washington Post, this was basically glossed over in nearly all the media. I'm not sure anybody caught it. So the Washington Post did this long story. It came out just on Sunday or Saturday. It was called Inside the Successes, Missteps, and Failures of Biden's Early Presidency. And it was sort of a recapitulation of the first year and 2/3 of the Biden presidency, which have been a gigantic failure. And they talk in this article about Joe Biden's COVID response. And here's what the Washington Post says, quote, "From the start, Biden's COVID response was anchored around two ideas. He would follow the science, and the science would show the way to ending the pandemic. After his first meeting with his COVID team, he gave them a pep talk. He said, I know this is going to be hard. I know there will be ups and downs. Things will not always go smoothly. But promise me this. You will tell me when there's a problem. You will put it on the table, and together we can solve it." For months afterward, he had a catchphrase he would use. "Tell me what to do, docs," the president would frequently say. But the reality was more complicated. Pfizer-BioNTech announced after the 2020 elections that their vaccine was more than 90% effective at preventing infection. Weeks later, Moderna announced over 94% efficacy at preventing infection. We still have not seen where that data came from, since it turns out not to be remotely true. That was the data that people like me were citing back in December 2020 when we...
Now here's the problem. Where did the data come from? All these people on the television, on the news, the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, all these government facilities that were telling you you had to get it, all these people that were being fired because they refused to get it, all the people that were out protesting, the teachers, firefighters, physicians, hospital workers, city transit employees, all these people that were out there saying, listen, first of all, it's unconstitutional. Second of all, this thing just came out the box like a year ago. Now you already have something that you're requiring me to take in order to stay at work. Okay. Why isn't it being made an option, though? Why is it being made a requirement? And also, why is it that if something goes wrong, that I cannot sue the pharmaceutical company? Right? Because if you're making something that is 94%, 95% effective, you should be able to stand behind that and say, okay, if something does go wrong, yeah, we'll accept liability. But that's not the case, is it? They will leave it up to the government to say, well, okay, yeah, we made you take it, and then if something goes wrong, then you have to go through the process of filing a lawsuit against us and trying to seek some compensation. But what if you don't have anybody to do that on your behalf? What if something does go terribly wrong and you end up dying? So this is my question. Where is Kyrie's apology? If everything this guy is saying is accurate, and of course, big salute to Judge Porzio in New York for reinstating those fired workers, right, that fought against the mandate. Of course, the city is appealing, but the decision just goes to show that there are a few people out there who are willing to use their intellectual powers for good and realize that even though the government presents you with something and says, here, you have to do this, it might not be in your best interest. That's just what it comes down to. So Kyrie missed how many games? How much did he lose per game? Now we find out that this whole thing was a farce. Where's his apology? You see, a lot of us have been riding with Kyrie ever since this, when he said, no, I'm not taking. Right? A lot of people weren't vocal about it because, of course, you weren't allowed to. You come out on social media and speak against it, all of a sudden, oh, yeah, you're offering misinformation and, blah, 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 blah. But, okay, so where is the blowback against all the people that offered misinformation on a medical stance that now proves to be false? You just heard it from one of their reps. Oh no, we didn't test it on that. No, we were trying to move at the speed of science, or you were trying to move at the speed of making money. How much do you think these pharmaceutical companies made? Ballpark, right? We're talking about billions of doses. Billions of doses. So what do you think they made? Forget about golden parachutes for these executives. We're talking about platinum parachutes. They must have made trillions of dollars. But now we're finding out, and this Daily Wire take is from a couple weeks ago. So it's already out. You don't hear anybody covering it because everybody is like, let's sweep it under the rug. Let's attack Kyrie for posting this link. He's out here advertising anti-Semitism, so let's go against him. Oh yeah, let's go against Ye too because he said all these things. And, oh, they're lies. But let's not address the elephant in the room. Do you know that the mandates are still in place? Why? For what possible reason? Control. That's it. There's no other reason. I want you to think about this logically. You can look at this spiel by Ben Shapiro himself. Look at the whole thing. It's roughly 45 minutes long. I think he talks about this in the first, I think better than 11 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. He goes on about it, talks about, how, Biden is still suing OSHA to have the mandates in place. Kyrie is owed an apology, and he's owed money. Rather than you asking him to donate $500K to the ADL, I would think you have a large check that you owe him, Adam Silver. Rather than suspending him for 5 games and taking away a chunk more out of his money, it seems that you owe him an apology. The league owes him an apology. and a reimbursement for all those games that he missed. That's my take, but what say you? What do you think?